Hello, I am David W. Parker. This is Programming Today. I learned WebGL series episode 100. Today it's going to be pretty simple. We're just going to be reorganizing our code to make things a little less crazy and having everything in one file, and that'll make things easier moving forward. Obviously this is a break from doing the 3D math one and getting back into some WebGL, so we should hopefully be in the future going back and forth between the two, and maybe throwing in some shader stuff pretty soon too. We will see. I just need to check my schedule. So as you can recall from before, we had a single index.js, and that basically housed everything that we needed for the application. So you could see we had constants here, our global state, main being called, we had the definition for the cube, we had callbacks and shaders and state initialization and overlays and basically everything that you'd want to have within the application. What we've done, and what I've done, is broken it up into a few different things so far. We have initialization, we have primitive cube, and eventually we may have other primitives, UI for the keyboard and for the mouse, and the renderer itself, and then finally the index. So let's go ahead and jump in and see what's different. So the index still has a couple of constants here, and it has our global state, which is going to be the default for that state in here. Additionally, this is where we're going to call the initialization that it's going to go to main, and main will end up calling other functions that are within other files, like the initialize one and the init textures. Finally, in order to make sure that all of the other files have access to everything we need, we have window.state is equal to state. And so you can see as we're running the application here, everything is the same as it was previously, but this time we are have everything broken up. So let's go ahead and look how we organized a little bit of the files. So initialize is going to have just a few functions that should be called only once within your application during the initialization of it. So callbacks, shaders, the GL settings, and any objects that you want. Pretty much everything here is pretty standard. I will note that I've gone down and used prettier on the code, so that'll actually forcefully format the code into a specific format. So you don't have to do that, obviously, but it's nice to have everything be in the same style from file to file and not have to worry about it when you're jumping from one application to another. Somebody might have prettier settings in one application and different ones in another, and it's nice to see consistent code stylings wherever you are looking. Finally, initializing objects here, and that's the last set of initialization. Again, needing to set window.initialize to the initialize function here because that is being used over here. UI keyboard and UI mouse, we're not having a wrapper function, right, like we are here. We can definitely do that if we wanted to, but we just know these are going to be global, and so it's easier to not do that, and then they could just be referenced here easily. Same for UI mouse. We have the mouse down, up, and move functions. These are all the exact same codes in the previous codes as the previous code, so there's no changes there, but just a note of how everything is organized. Next up, we have things to deal with the renderer itself. So we have the overlay here, which just kind of tells us the eye position, as well as updating the state based off the UI pressed functionality, what's going to happen with the renderer in there, and then also rendering the animation, so drawing the animation state and tick change, again drawing, dealing with the matrices and what we're doing, blend and depth, and the depth mask. And then again, we need to have the render.render with the draw and the render function out on the global window because it is ended up being used in here. As you can see, render.draw, and I believe it's somewhere else as well. I'm not going to look for it at the moment, but just recall that you need to have that kind of stuff if you need to access somewhere else. Finally, we have the primitive cube. Again, everything is the same as before. This is just going to be on the window itself, not doing a wrapper. One thing that I haven't really liked about the prettier is that it defaults to setting up one argument per line when given an array like this, and that's not as useful generally speaking as having things clumped into fourths. I may look into settings to see if I can figure that out, but in the meantime I'm just living with that, and I may end up changing back for at least this file that prettier will not be run on. Outside of that, everything is the exact same within this function in that it knows how to render itself and knows how to take its own program and render the buffers and do everything that it needs to. So that's it for this episode. It's just kind of a reorganization of code. This kind of sets us up to splice things up even more in the future, and if you've watched any of my Webpack series, you could see that there's a lot of cool things you can do with only loading the data and JavaScript files that you want to on demand, rather than doing something like this. We would only load what we actually need at that time. We may look into doing that sometime in the future as well, but being that this is a WebGL series and trying to keep it nice and simple and not get too deep into other things like Webpack and Node and whatnot. That's it for this episode, though. If you like what you saw, go ahead and subscribe and give a like. Share on social media if you will. Go to ProgrammingTIL.com, sign up for our newsletter, and have a great one. Thanks.